Welcome in, college football recap. Good morning, everybody, wherever you're watching. Appreciate you joining. My name is Jeff Cameron. Good to have you along. Let's get to the football. Good times on 3. College football recap, top 25 rundown. Joining me today on the program will be Clint Lamb from Bama Insider. We'll also be joined by Austin Price from VolQuest. Hey, good time to have those two gentlemen on, as this ratchets up to a must-see game next weekend. I'll break down Florida State's loss on the road to NC State, as improbable as it was, of 17-3. They fall apart in the second half, so I'll represent warchant.com. Let's get to that top 25. I mentioned Alabama at the outset. They survived 24-20 with backup Jalen Milroe starting in place of Bryce Young. Georgia gets back on track against hapless Auburn, 42-10. The Brian Harsin fire watch is on, no doubt, as we look around these scores. Ohio State wins comfortably 49-20 over Michigan State. Michigan State is in shambles as well. By the way, C.J. Stroud tying a school record with 6 touchdown passes. And go figure, Marvin Harrison Jr. is really good at football. 3 touchdown receptions in that one. Michigan hummed their way to a 31-10 win over Indiana. Nothing really to see there, but a good afternoon for J.J. McCarthy. Was 28 of 36 for 304 yards and 3 touchdowns. Southern Cal got the win over Washington State. Fun game for Southern Cal. Played good defense there, 30-14. Caleb Williams throws 2 touchdowns to Mario Williams. Oklahoma State in a wild one over Texas Tech. Figured it might be 41-31. Spencer Sanders runs for 2 touchdowns, pass for another. Cowboys win in Stillwater. Tennessee, aforementioned, again, we'll have Austin Price on later. 40, LSU 13. Domination from the start. The Volunteers 5-0 start. The best since 2016 for them. Mississippi 52, Vandy 28. Dicey for a little while there. Jackson Dart throws for a career-high 448 yards and 3 touchdowns for Ole Miss. UCLA beats Utah. Good win for UCLA. 42-32. They end a 4-game losing streak to Utah. Dorian Thompson-Robinson continues to be the story. 299 yards and 4 touchdowns to become UCLA's career leader in passing touchdowns. Oregon stomps Arizona 49-22. Bo Nix, good evening. South Carolina 24, Kentucky 14. Spencer Rattler overcomes some early turnovers. Kentucky was without Will Levis, and thus South Carolina gets the win there. Notre Dame 28, BYU 20. Drew Pine throws for 262 yards, 3 touchdowns. Michael Mayer caught 11 passes for 118 yards. And the little Cinderella run for Kansas, and it's been a great story in college football. One of the better stories. Game day was there yesterday to watch the loss. TCU wins the game 38-31. Max Duggan passing for 3 touchdowns in the second half, but Quentin Johnston was the story. Have yourself a day, 206 yards on 14 receptions. Yeah, that'll work. Kansas State beats Iowa State 10-9. Maybe one of the more unwatchable games. Tends to happen when Iowa State plays. Adrian Martinez, another good day, though. 246 in the air. Rush for 77. They win it 10-9 in Ames, Iowa. Arizona State beats Washington 45-38. Good for interim coach Sean Aguano getting his first victory. Should be noted as well, Mississippi State continues to play good defense. They win 40-17 over Arkansas, who was without KJ Jefferson. Should be noted that Texas win, by the way, 49-0 over Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry behind Quinn Ewers, throwing for 289 yards and 4 touchdowns. Most lopsided loss for the now 3-3 Sooners in their program's history. That is hard to fathom, but you saw it yesterday, 49-0 in that football game. All right. As I mentioned at the top, we have a chance to talk with Clint Lamb from Bama Insider. He's going to join us, in fact, right now. Excited to talk to him about what Alabama did in getting the win. Clint, thanks for joining us on the program. The Tide are 6-0. Kind of a weird win. Let's start with Jalen Milroe. Uneven start for him. Talk to me about his play at quarterback, filling in for Bryce Young.
Yeah, I think uneven is a good way to put it. There were some good moments, especially for it being his first start. You know, people's got to understand, last week when he came into the game against Arkansas, he really didn't have a chance to overthink things or to get nervous. I mean, it was in an instant that he was the starting quarterback or he was in there, playing football for Alabama. Now he had an entire week not only to prepare, they did have a game plan that was designed around him. But at the same time, I think he overthought a lot of stuff. You know, he looked like he was extremely nervous. He was kind of panicked, and he just made poor decision after poor decision. And I think that when you look at, probably what Alabama's game plan was going into it, it was probably, hey, we feel really good about our defense versus their offense. We're going to be able to consistently put pressure on them. We feel like we can maybe generate some turnovers with Haynes King, being the starting quarterback. We know we're going to be able to run the football against that defensive front because they had been susceptible to giving up yardage, chunk yardage on the ground, especially in recent weeks. For Milroe, it was probably, hey, you don't have to go out there and win this football game for us. You just can't do things that are going to help lose this football game for us. And I feel like that's probably the biggest mistake that Jalen Milroe made, was that he did, several things. And there were a couple of other throws that he made that really should have been intercepted or were.
Seem to have lost. Did we lose Clint, or is that on me? I don't know if we've lost Clint or not. Let's see if we can get him back. Feel like Clint kind of checked out there. Trey, try to get him back. He's talking about Jalen Milroe, who, by the way, like you would expect, are going to have ups and downs. Milroe had the two fumbles. And so when I say uneven play, obviously that's a situation where you don't want to put the ball on the ground. You'll live with some of the passing mistakes. That's a work in progress for him right now. But at the same time, putting the ball on the ground allowed Texas A&M to get back in this game. This takes a defensive stand. Now, I'm hoping to get Clint back because one of the things that I want to talk about with him is, well, besides Jahmyr Gibbs, he's so much fun to watch play the game. It'll be fun to have a conversation with him. But also, when you watch Alabama right now, they had 14 quarterback pressures in this football game. They had that cheetah package, which is something that when you watch, you just see them terrorize opposing quarterbacks. And that, too, is a fun topic because they brought the heat time and again. And I think at the end of the day, you talk about tackles for loss, you talk about pressures. Whenever we look at defenses, we talk about havoc. You're always looking to see who can provide the most of that. And Alabama's defense, with the stars that they have lined up, too deep on every position, with this package, you're going to be able to do that. Alabama does get that win. Should be mentioning here as we effort again to get Clint back on. We'll see if we can. With Alabama surviving with Jalen Milroe starting in place of Bryce Young, I would say that I think there's a good chance Bryce Young gets back. Again, not entirely certain about that right now, but it seems like this was precautionary. I think Alabama felt like they could win this game with their defense. Narrowly did, but it is a win. And that's what's different about this Alabama team this year. A lot of times in the past when we watched Alabama, felt like no matter who was starting for them at quarterback, no matter who was missing for them, whether it was a starting defender, a starting offensive weapon, Alabama always had somebody that could replace him and be almost his equivalent, right? Maybe a little bit wet behind the ears, but still immensely talented. Alabama's looked fallible this year. In fact, let's talk big picture of college football right now. One of my favorite aspects of what we're seeing this season is that the talking points centered around college football right now have less to do with the big four, big three that we've seen time and again. Most of the time, it's Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, kind of rotating Georgia recently, obviously, and that's all we talk about. But this year, I think because there's some fallibility with some of these teams, we're getting the bigger picture of talking about who could sneak in there. We got Clint Lamb back joining us now. Clint, I was talking while you were gone just a moment ago with the technical difficulties, and good to have you back, that one of the things I really liked about this win for Alabama is obviously you're able to get a win with a backup quarterback in a tough situation, but Alabama's still fallible. There are a lot of things to love. I wanted to ask you over and over again about 3 or 4 players in particular that I enjoy watching, but more importantly, defensively, the cheetah package. Talk about what that is. Talk about the havoc it wreaks, because Alabama turned that a lot in this football game when they had to have stops and got after the quarterback.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see that a lot next week against Tennessee, too. I think it's going to be a crucial package because Hendon Hooker has been such a good decision maker with the football. Tennessee can spread you out. They got a lot of weapons. They can run the football, too. But the cheetah package for Alabama is where they bring 3 outside linebackers or 3 edge players onto the field to be in their 4-man front, along with 1 true lone defensive lineman. And, with Justin DeBoybe being out, which he missed the Texas game last week with a neck injury, we don't know how long he's going to be out. But then, of course, he missed this week as well. They've been using a combination of Jamil Burroughs and Jamarian Latham, and I think that both those 2 guys played pretty well. But really, it's, having that trio of outside linebackers or edge players that really makes the biggest difference because, I mean, it's three of the best pass rushers in college football. So you get Will Anderson, you get Chris Braswell, and you get Dallas Turner. And I mean, last week or the last couple of weeks when they started to use that a little bit more, we had heard about it throughout fall camp and stuff, but we just hadn't seen it a ton until recent weeks. You saw, Will Anderson getting lined up in, to the lone side with them kind of overloading the other side. And it was to get him in some isolated, one-on-one situations. This week, we saw Dallas Turner playing in that role. He ended up having 2 sacks in this game. But I think that's probably because Alabama understands that Will Anderson's going to be able to apply pressure on the quarterback, whether he's getting one-on-one situations or not. But they're also putting him on that other side and allowing, with Chris Braswell, it's very difficult to chip and do a lot of things to really try to slow him down. And I mean, I want to say between the two, really between the three, I mean, it was like north of 20 total pressures last night. I think Will Anderson had like 11. Dallas Turner had like 8, and then Braswell had like 4 or 5, and that includes hits, sacks, and hurries as well. So I mean, anytime that they needed it in 3rd and long, or 3rd and 6 or 7 or more, they were able to generate consistent pressure. It was almost immediate, and it certainly affected the quarterback.
Yeah, they terrorized, obviously, Texas A&M in 3rd and obvious. It became a rough night. I would ask you, too, about Alabama. Generally speaking, it's interesting for us from afar watching. You guys cover it every day for Bama Insider. This Alabama team, they had the close call, obviously the narrow win against Texas. This game turned out to be a lot closer than what Vegas thought it was going to be. I think this was a 24-point spread. So when I talk about teams at the top of the college football world, and Alabama's there annually, this is a more fallible group than we've seen before. At least it's perceived to be that way. I know Alabama loses a lot, but they always have studs in the wings waiting to replace those that leave. Why do you think so far that I guess you could say the Alabama performance against some of the better teams have been uneven as well?
Well, I think that, it's kind of a combination of factors. Back in the day, under Nick Saban, it felt like, revenge games or, any type of situation where you felt like maybe Nick Saban took something personally or, going on the road. It just felt like Alabama was a lot more steady, and they struggle in some of those situations now. And I feel like that when things start to go wrong, to their credit, they were able to, right the ship last week against Arkansas, really on that 3rd and 15, big run from Jalen Milroe. That certainly shifted momentum back in Alabama's favor. Not only did they win, but they won big. But other than that, I mean, things were going wrong against Texas on the road. It was a hostile environment. Even guys like Will Anderson, who you just really don't see play poorly or be overwhelmed, he seemed to be overwhelmed and was making uncharacteristic mistakes. Really, the only calming presence during that game was Bryce Young. And if he's not who he is, Alabama doesn't win that football game, and that's period. I mean, everybody's, other than Nick Saban and Bryce Young, were rattled for Alabama. In this particular game, you didn't have Bryce Young on the field. You had a guy who was really struggling at quarterback, but the defense was really the calming, steady presence. And I mean, even on that last drive, really not until they got pretty deep into the red zone, where I really started to think, okay, it is possible that Texas A&M might score here. Other than that, when it was, a couple of minutes to go and A&M got the football, knowing that defense, I felt very confident in Alabama's ability to win the game because you trust those guys. And so they got some great pieces, and it's up and down. It's uneven play. And in there's nothing really I can point to and say this is the problem. I feel like if it was that easy, they would be able to correct it. But it just feels like that sometimes guys, some of these young players, they tend to let things, when things start going wrong, they don't have the ability to handle the adversity maybe as well as they have in the past. So I certainly think that's contributing.
Run out of adjectives to describe the play of Jahmyr Gibbs. I just say his name out loud and smile because I love watching great football players do great things. He is simply phenomenal. Anything to add about the big matchup coming up against Tennessee? This is a lot of fun. It's an old rivalry that everybody loves. Maybe some juice to it again here, beginning to build. I can't wait for this football game. Talk about what you're expecting there.
Yeah, with Jahmyr Gibbs, I mean, you're talking about a dynamic playmaker with a football in his hands, a receiver, runner. At the beginning of the season, it was more, lining him up all over the place, allowing him to make plays in the passing game. He did have the explosive run against Utah State, but really the run game for him really hadn't started, until I guess Jalen Milroe has been very critical in him getting inserted in the lineup and them giving Jahmyr Gibbs more opportunities. And I think a guy like Seth McLaughlin starting at center, his ability to block out in space and pull and do a lot of different things is really helping this Alabama offense. And he's been a huge part of a lot of Jahmyr Gibbs' big runs. But, when you look at Tennessee, I think a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have a huge role. He's going to have to. And hopefully, Bryce Young is back. That's a hostile environment. In a lot of ways, I wonder, was last night's game good for Alabama? And what I mean by that is if they railroad Texas A&M and like a lot of people had expected, everybody's singing their praises. Of course, people would be saying, hey, Tennessee's a top 10 team. This is their best chance to beat Alabama, really since Nick Saban got to Tuscaloosa. But now, a lot of people are picking Tennessee. Like the upset is already being determined, and I think that bodes well for Alabama playing with a chip on its shoulder, which is something that maybe they've kind of struggled with at times.
Well, they don't get the opportunity to do it as often as everybody else does, obviously. And so being second guessed is Nick Saban's dream, right? To get a win and not always look good doing it provides the ammunition a coach needs to go in and say, look, this is why I tell you guys details matter. This is why you have to play well every week. There are other good football teams out here. Those kids are on scholarship too. So coaches love to get wins when they don't look great or when they have adversity. A, it builds character. B, it points to the film room where you can correct some things and get their attention. Should be a fun game. By the way, final question for you. I lied. I had one more. What do we know of Bryce Young and whether or not he is looking like he's going to project to start or not? Or when will we know?
I think that Nick Saban's probably going to keep that under wraps as much as possible, just to give Tennessee a lot more to prepare for. But I do think that it's probably going to be Bryce Young. I feel like he was pretty close this week. You didn't even see him warm up or make throws. He was fully dressed last night. He did go through the warm-up process, but you never saw him attempt one throw. And I don't think they were going to give anybody, including Tennessee, that. But at the same time, I think that he has to be available because, with his health and stuff, obviously you don't want to do anything that's going to hurt him long-term, but Jalen Milroe and just the fact that he kind of felt overwhelmed. If he felt overwhelmed in Tuscaloosa last night against a defense where you can run the football, next week against Tennessee and Neyland Stadium is going to be a much different beast. So hopefully he's able to go. And you got to think, if not for the 4 turnovers, I think this game does play out the way that a lot of people thought that it was going to. And I think that's important to note. It felt like that they were getting positive momentum and really starting to work their way down the field. And then you get like a crucial sack that you shouldn't have taken by Jalen Milroe or some sort of, strip fumble. The interception, I don't think was that big of a deal. Essentially, it was a 44-yard punt. Which it was 3rd and 12, and you probably didn't think you were going to be getting it anyway. So throw it down the field, and if they catch it, just don't let them, return it for anything, and it ends up working as a punt. But yeah, I do think that Bryce Young is going to be key, and but at the same time, it is going to give Tennessee a little bit more to prepare for this week.
Clint, always a pleasure, buddy. Thanks for jumping on here this morning, wrapping Alabama's win over Texas A&M. You can read more at Bama Insider. Everybody, go check it out. As always, the best in the business with On3. Clint, take care, buddy.
Absolutely, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely. And moving forward from there, we'll segue over to Tennessee's side. We bring on our guy, Austin Price, again. Austin, how are you? You're always making time for us while you're driving, which I appreciate, buddy.
Buddy, I'm trying, Jeff. I'm trying. Whatever service I have, I apologize.
No, you're good. Austin Price from VolQuest joins us right now. This game, Austin, really quick, let's get to the meat of it. It was grand opening, grand closing from the start. LSU fumbled the opening kickoff. Tennessee recovered. Next thing you know, 5 plays later, it's 7-0. Never really looked back from there. Total domination. I think you could say this was a wrap at 20-0, wasn't it? Tennessee right now is scary. If the defense is going to play like that, isn't that the story? Because we knew about the offense, but the defense was phenomenal yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday I thought they played really, really well, Jeff. I thought this was the most complete game of the Josh Heupel era. They did some really good things, and when you look at defensively what they're getting done at the line of scrimmage with Rodney Garner, it's really impressive, Jeff. 55 yards rushing for LSU yesterday, 260 for Tennessee. On the flip side, so defensively the secondary was better. Which I expected them to be. They had a certain game plan against Florida, and it was just frankly not a very good one. And Tennessee, it almost cost them late, but they found a way to win. They're now 5-0 for the first time since 2016, and now they'll play Alabama. I don't know what who's Clint talking to? Who's crafting the narrative that Tennessee's beating Alabama next week outside of a few overzealous ball fans? I'd love to know who's already made that prediction.
It's like the two sites for On3 are trying to lay the groundwork here. It's Austin, I would say this. It's going to be interesting because I think that he may be right about this. I think fans, based on the score of that Alabama game and the way that Hendon Hooker's played for Tennessee, are all going to call for the upset. Now, you've heard this story and seen this before, so you're saying, wait a minute, hold on. Alabama should still be the number one ranked team in the country, still going to be the favorite. Tennessee took care of an LSU offense that's not very good. By the way, you mentioned those stats. 55 yards rushing on 18 carries. If you count the quarterback in that for LSU, it's 45 yards on 27. That's 1.7 yards per game. That is total domination for Tennessee, but we know Alabama is a different story. Talk big picture, though, for what we're seeing from Tennessee right now. And Coach Heupel, this is one of the best stories in college football this year. And I think people are going from, hey, this Tennessee team's really improved. They're a lot of fun to watch. The offense is electrifying. They may have a Heisman candidate, too. How good is Tennessee? So I ask you, Austin, how good is Tennessee?
Well, I made the comment yesterday in our post-game podcast and our 2-minute drill after the game. I think it's time we start treating Tennessee like the top 10 team they are. I think, all of us that cover them have watched 15 years of, not very good football. And I think that everybody that covers this program is a bit jaded to actual success. And so you take for granted, Jeff, what you're seeing. And so I think when you chalk it up and you line it up and you see whatever Tennessee's done in the first 5 weeks, they're a top 10 team. It's time to treat them like that. Listen, if Bryce Young can't play next week, then Tennessee can beat Alabama. Alabama is not the same team without Bryce Young. So the narrative that got crafted was that they can win a game without Alabama doesn't have Bryce Young. If Bryce Young plays, then things get considerably more difficult for Tennessee. But hey, Tennessee was right there in a one-score game in Tuscaloosa last year. Ironically, if you go back to when Nick Saban got there in 2007, Tennessee is yet to beat Nick Saban at all, but they're yet to play a close game at Neyland Stadium. Like the 3 or 4 times Tennessee's actually been in the game in the fourth quarter, played a close game against Alabama, it's been in Tuscaloosa, which makes not any sense at all when you think about it, but somehow they found a way to be in games on the road, but not at Neyland since Nick took over.
Got to imagine that atmosphere, which was already awesome for the country to see when they played Florida, will be once again the talk of college football this next week. And really, in this game, I'm kind of curious. We talk about programs trying to turn it around. It's always good for college football when programs that have been down get better, especially those that have cachet and the bigger picture of college football. What is it that Coach Heupel has done that has led to this kind of renaissance, if you will? Talk big picture again, I guess I would ask you, Austin. What is he specifically doing that lets this team play so loose?
Well, he talked about this a week or two ago, Jeff, about my experience as a player allows me to just talk to the guys a certain way, to talk to the players and say, hey man, you can't stick your head in the sand, you can't get in a bubble. Like the whole notion that you can just block out the noise is silly. You can't. Kids are hearing from their uncle, their mom, their dad, their cousins, their friends, their girlfriends, anybody and everybody from the media. You can't block this out, so you just have to embrace it. And that's one thing he's preached is, hey man, just embrace this. So like Tennessee, they're embracing game day. They're embracing SEC Nation. They're embracing going on the road. Look, yesterday Tennessee had 15 to 20,000 fans there. It was loud. I mean, I sit there in the post game or in the pregame media meal area, and was drinking by Mr. Pibb, and I have my back turned, and I hear Rocky Top get struck up, and it sounds like a home game. I turned around and I'm like, holy crap. And so I'm like, I look around the stadium and like it's just really, really impressive. All the ball fans have gravitated. But hey, guess what? We've seen it with baseball the last year. We've seen it with basketball a few times over the last 15 years. Tennessee starved for a winner. So the moment they started doing anything, the fans were going to be out in force, and they are.
Austin, have a great week. Enjoy this. It's a lot of fun, I know, to cover. It's a lot of fun to cover a matchup that is as grandiose in the big scheme of things as this one is. You guys can catch his work at VolQuest. Austin Price joins us frequently as Tennessee's one of the great stories of college football this year. Be well, good sir. Safe travels.
Hey, I appreciate you, Jeff. Sorry about the interconnect connection for whatever you did here.
We're good, buddy. We're good. I can hear you. That's Austin Price with VolQuest. Yeah, that's funny. I've covered college football for 24 years now, and obviously everybody's a fan of somebody. I went to Florida State, transparency here, and so everybody's rooting for somebody, right? And you want to see teams get back. But when you think about the bigger picture and how much we all are, and I bring this up every week on college football recap, how we're all connected in that way because it's a sport we love and have great passion for. It's fun to look around college football right now and see some of the programs that have been down rising back to the top. And for starters, I would say Tennessee is one of those. Obviously, there are others still searching, like Nebraska, who got a win on Friday night against Rutgers, which, again, for Nebraska right now in a coaching search, any win's a good win. You look at other schools and other programs that are looking to put their name back in the hat, back in the ring amongst the top of college football. Southern Cal, not so quietly, sits at number 6 in the country after being dormant for some time now. I just got done talking about Tennessee, but you look at a program like Ole Miss or maybe Mississippi State, who's playing really good defense right now. Looks like UCLA is finally moving in the right direction as Dorian Thompson-Robinson passed for 299 yards, had the 4 touchdowns for UCLA. They get the win. That's a big win for UCLA. So a lot of fun to watch some of these programs. Florida State's one of those teams I just mentioned that I cover, in addition to hosting this show and some others around the country for On3, that thought for sure they had made a huge step forward. But then last night, you look at the second half of the game against NC State, up 17-3 at halftime. You'll get all the meaningful numbers for Florida State in this game. They are outshining NC State in this contest for most of it, but then you get the drop passes from Johnny Wilson, from Malik McClain, from Pokey as well. Then you had Jordan making some tough decisions on the road there uncharacteristically this year. And the next thing you know, even after an NC State injury at quarterback to Devin Leary, they fight back because of the impotent offense in the second half for Florida State. Next thing you know, it's a bad loss, 19-17. And at the end of the day, Florida State, who starts 4-0 with a win over LSU, gets a road win at Louisville with a backup quarterback, all these good feelings that have been mustered for the Noles, somewhat soured now with back-to-back losses. A hard-fought loss to Wake Forest, now a 2-point loss on the road to NC State as a slight underdog. And their grand reward for Florida State is they get to welcome in Clemson, obviously probably the best team in the ACC, and a group at the defensive front that will be very, very difficult for Florida State to block. So what happens to the Noles season from here could move to 4-3. All would not be lost at that point if I had told the fan base before the season that they could still finish 8-4 or somewhere in that ballpark. I think that would be accepted. But when you lose 2 straight, now on the verge of maybe losing 3 straight, especially when you blow a 17-3 lead, it's going to be difficult for fans to swallow that. Also, along the way, some injuries that are beginning to mount for Florida State. So it'll be very fascinating to see how they bounce back. Want to talk a little bit bigger picture here one more time, just to remind you guys that moving forward, every week at this time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, we will do the college football recap. And On3, obviously, the network in which we reach out and have an opportunity to talk to experts on the ground. It's not just a Tennessee show. It's not just an Alabama show. It's not just a Florida State show. It's really anywhere where we have the network to be able to cover these teams thoroughly for you, bring on their expertise, talk about the top 25, what just happened. Obviously, the ebbs and flow of college football is something we all invest in every weekend and love to talk about. So every Sunday morning, make sure you like and subscribe. That way you'll know that the college football recap is underway. We look to bring on more and more guests each week, again, covering your favorite team, getting the best in the business to tell you what's what from an injury standpoint. We preview the week ahead after looking back at the week that was. In addition to all of that, we will have featured interviews. We're looking to continue to expand. Your support allows us to do that. So like and subscribe. And as I said at the outset here, make sure you're following the best in the business and their respective sites by On3. I mentioned Clint Lamb from Bama Insider. We want to thank him for joining us. Corey Clark was on the road. Bad signal there from warchant.com. I took up the slack for him, but we'll be good to go moving forward with them as well. Austin Price does a great job with VolQuest. But again, we have had Penn State. We've had Michigan. We've had onward and onward we go with these teams. So each week we'll profile the biggest game you could bet. may very well be looking once again at Tennessee and Alabama next week, as that is a battle of two top 10 teams. I want to thank Trey Ennedy for his job producing the program. I want to thank all of you guys today for hopping on, watching with us. Again, Top 25 recap, college football recap from On3. I'm Jeff Cameron. We'll do it again every week. Like and subscribe, and I'll be back with you next Sunday morning. Take care, everybody.